All right, so I wanted to make a video on what I think is one of the hardest, if not the most difficult group of muscles to memorize. And this is of your back, of the posterior trunk of the body. There's just a lot going on here. There's a lot of names that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. So let's just dive right in. So this picture is cut into two sides. So if you kind of just cut the body down the middle here, we have the more superficial muscles on the left, on the surface, and then we have the more intermediate muscles. If we were to strip these muscles away, we would get everything that's over here for the most part, the intermediate muscles. All right, so there's a lot here. Let's just kind of dive right in. All right, so starting at the top here, we do have the trapezius, this kind of area here. From an EMT perspective, this is where you do that trapezius pinch, kind of right here. So that's just a little bit easier to remember. Okay, that's your traps. Then we have a little bit of our deltoid, which is more of an anterior muscle, but you can see it. It is on this picture. So this is just our deltoid here. I put it in orange, and I just put anterior just to show that's more of an anterior muscle. Okay. Then we have this interesting one here called the infraspinatus fascia. It kind of looks like Africa or South America. I guess more like Africa. And that's, for infraspinatus fascia. I'm going to jump over this side just for a second. So this is, again, more on the intermediate side of things. So if we were to strip this fascia away, we would see the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus. Okay, now the supraspinatus, this is easy to remember because it's right here, and this is really where you would attach, I don't know, a cape, like you were Superman, supraspinatus. Okay, so you could think of it that way. And then inferior to the supraspinatus is the infraspinatus, which is this part that's just underneath this infraspinatus fascia. Okay, so that's how you would kind of remember that. I think I had some other mnemonics too. Okay. All right, so back on our left superficial side here. So this one's kind of a fun one. This is the teres major, which you can also see still on the intermediate side here. The way I think of this is it's very close to our underarm, and underarm BO gives you major teres, major teres, teres major. Okay, so that's how I think of that one. You could see it on both sides here. Okay, then we have this massive muscle here on our back. And this is our latissimus dorsi, all right? So dorsi, you could think of for dorsal, which means the back, but this is just our latissimus dorsi. You could, think latissimus, flatissimus, because it's just big and it's flat, okay? And then we have another kind of more anterior muscle, but you can see it here on the posterior. That's our external oblique down here. Okay, so then we have our epicranius, the occipital belly. There's an epicranius that you can see, I believe, on the anterior as well. But remember, this is kind of the occipital part of the skull, of the occipital lobe of the cranium, or the occipital bone. And then you can think of epicranius, which just means, epi, which means like on or upon the cranium. So the epicranius, occipital belly. All right, then we have these two that I kind of like to link, and I don't necessarily have a mnemonic for these, but we have the spinalis, which is actually, the mnemonic is that it's close to the spine, right? The spinalis, which is just right on the spine, spinalis, and then you have the spinalis capitis. So if you look at the spinal cord being in this realm, you have the capitis version of this, and then you have just the normal spinalis version of this, okay? So we already did our supraspinatus is here, but then this one is the levator scapulae, which you can think of like, I don't know, kind of lifts the scapula, which would be in this area. So that's how I kind of remember that one. External intercostals is easier to remember because you're just looking in between. You can kind of see like this is where our ribs would be, and we're looking in between those. So our intercostals in this region here. Serratus anterior, a little bit harder to remember, but this is the serratus anterior. The longissimus I remember just because how long these, I believe these are just like it's an area of tendons, just because of how long this area is. So longissimus, I remember there. And then the last one, which is the iliocostalis. You can remember costalis because it's near the costal area, near the intercostals of the ribs. And then I think ilio because of Elio's pizza. And there's like a little bit of a white crust in the tendon area and a little bit of pizza here in the red area. So that's how I remember that as being the iliocostalis. But those are all of, or most of the muscles of the posterior trunk.